So what is standard deviation? You've learned to calculate it, but what does it actually tell us? Let's find out. If I were to ask you, what is the average height of everyone in our class? You might take a guess. 5'7"? Maybe. Because we can find an average, does that mean everyone is the same height? We know that the answer is no. Everyone's height will vary. Some people will be taller, and some will be shorter than average. We know that there will be variation around the average. But how do we communicate that? Do we think there are people who are 9 feet tall? We need a method of describing how much taller or shorter people are compared to the average. One option that you may think is that we can just measure how far everyone's height is from the average and find the mean of those distances. This is certainly one way of communicating the how much variation we see. What about these two cases? If I were to ask you intuitively, which group has more variation in heights? You would probably say the bottom group. Yet if we calculate and compare the average of these distances, or which we also call deviations, we find that they actually produce the same result, an average distance of 3 inches. However, in the bottom group, there are people who are much taller and shorter, and so certainly their heights are more spread out. We need a way that can account for people who are much taller and much shorter. Enter the standard deviation. By squaring the distances, points that are farther than average are weighted more. Then we see the square root cancels the squared measurement, so we can still talk about people's heights in inches rather than squared inches. So the group whose heights are more spread out and with more variation will show the bigger measurement of 3.39 inches instead of compared to 3. And thus we see the standard deviation does what we need. It allows us to communicate how much variation and how spread apart we might expect values to be away from our average, which in turn allows us to understand how tall or how short we might expect people to be compared to the average. In short, the standard deviation tells us the typical distance we expect values to be from the mean.